Good evening, second graders. So tonight our homework is going to be focused on two-step word problems, just like we were doing in class today. Since there are two steps, that means that for each word problem, we should have two equations to help us solve the problem. So let's read the directions first. Think about the first step question, then solve the problem. So we're thinking about the question that it's being asked, but then we need to think about what information are we missing that we need to use another equation to solve for. Okay, let's look at number 1. Let's read it together. Ready? Bessie counts 5 fish, 3 turtles, and some frogs. She counts 14 animals altogether. How many frogs does Bessie count? Okay, so we know that question is asking about frogs, and they've given us the total number of animals that they've counted, and it says all together. So I can see the group is animals, the whole group, and then there are different parts to that group: fish, turtles, and frogs. So that tells me that this is a part whole problem. So I'm going to start, since there's 3 groups, fish, turtles, and frogs, I'm going to write for 3 parts. That's a little messy. Let me erase that. Okay, so I'm going to write for 3 parts. Part 1, part 2, and part 3. Okay, and that equals the whole. So part 1 is the fish, part 2 is the turtles, and part 3 is the frogs, which is our missing information that we want to figure out from the question. And it says she counts 14 animals altogether. Okay, so we were able to write an equation based on the information given. There's nothing missing that we need to put in. The only thing that we need to do is add these 2 add-ins together to make solving this a little bit easier. So we need to add together 5 and 3 first, so that way our problem's a little bit easier to solve. So 5 plus 3 equals, and we know if we do 5 plus 3, five, and then add on 3 more, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 3, so I'm going to stop there. And that will give me the total of these 2 add-ins added together. So I know I'm doing 8 plus box equals 14. So now I can draw my picture to solve my problem. 8, and I'm counting up to 14. So 8's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, I can double check. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I have enough circles. Then I can count them to find my answer, which is 2 plus 4. So my answer is 6. I'm sure that you guys got that for your answer too. You were doing great with this in class. Okay, and then it asks how many frogs. That's right. So frogs is our label. Okay, great job. Let's move on to problem number 2. Okay, let's read problem number 2 together. Amy has 6 more blue feathers than white feathers. She has 2 more green feathers than blue feathers. Amy has 4 white feathers. How many green feathers does Amy have? Wow, this is a complicated question. So when I'm reading this, I kept saying more than. That tells me that this is a compare type problem, okay? She has 2 more green feathers than blue feathers. So I can compare the green feathers with the blue feathers, since it's asking about the green feathers. So whenever I do a compare problem, for me, it's a little easier to set up my picture first, because it helps me plug the numbers into my equation later. Okay, so when I set up my comparison bars, I'm thinking about which one has more, green or blue. And it says she has 2 more green feathers than blue feathers. So that means there are more green than blue. Now, it doesn't say how many green feathers she has. That is what the question's asking. It's saying how many green feathers does Amy have? So I need to put a question mark there for the green feathers. It says Amy has 6 more blue feathers than white feathers, but it doesn't tell us how many blue feathers she has. So I need to write a line here because that is my missing information that I need to solve for. And then for the difference, it says she has 2 more green feathers than blue feathers, so I know the difference is 2. So right now, my equation looks like M is box minus F, which is a line, that's our missing information, equals D, which is 2. Okay, now I need to figure out this missing part, which is how many blue feathers there are. So to figure out how many blue feathers there are, we need to compare blue feathers with white feathers. So I'm going to draw another comparison bar. And I need to ask myself, are there more blue feathers than white feathers or more white feathers than blue feathers? And the first sentence says Amy has 6 more blue feathers than white feathers. So I know that there are more blue than white. Okay, blue is what we're trying to figure out. White feathers, it says Amy has 4 white feathers. And it says in the first sentence, Amy has 6 more blue feathers than white feathers. So that's different. Now, in a comparison bar, these two always add up to the top. Or in other words, here we have box minus 4 equals 6. And 4 and 6 are added together because those are the partners that make up this total. So 4 plus 6 equals 10. So I know that there are 10 blue feathers. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to plug that in to my picture over here. F equals 10. I'm going to plug it into my equation. And now I can solve for the box for green feathers. Box minus 10 equals 2. Just like we said over here with the blue and white feathers, we're adding the 2 partners, which are 10 and 2, to get the total, which is the largest number. So 10 plus 2 more, 10, 11, 12. So our answer is going to be 12. And when I look for the label, I'm looking after how many? How many green feathers? Good. That was quite complicated. We had to do 2 compare equations in order to solve here. So let's see if the next one is any easier or maybe it's a little more difficult. Let's check it out. Okay, number 3, let's read it together. Mr. Green puts 5 tulips and some roses in a vase. There are 14 flowers in the vase. Then Mr. Green adds 2 more roses to the vase. How many roses are in the vase now? Ooh, okay. So it's asking how many roses are in the vase now. So I already know when something says how many are there now, that means this is a start, change, result problem. That's right. Okay, the question is asking how many are in there now. So that is the result. I'm going to put a box for the result. Okay, the change. Let's look back. Mr. Green puts 5 tulips and some roses, and there were 14 in the vase. Then Mr. Green adds 2 more roses to the vase, okay? So the change is that they're adding 2 more. Now, you might think that the start is 14 flowers, but if we look at the question, is it asking how many flowers? No, it's saying how many roses. So we can't put 14 for the start because 14 is the tulips and the roses together. So for our start right now, we need to just make a line, and then we need to go and find out how many roses there were in the vase. So let's go back to the other information. We're going to figure out how many roses there were. We know there were 5 tulips, some roses, all together 14 flowers. So I know that is part whole because there's a group of tulips, there's a group of roses, and all together we have some flowers. So for tulips, we had 5 tulips. So we're going to put 5. For roses, it says some roses. So I'm just going to put a box there. And then we know all together there were 14 flowers. So now I need to find this missing number of roses. 5 plus box equals 14. So what we can do, we can solve this in many different ways. I'm going to subtract by making a 10. So 14 is 10 and 4. So first I'm going to subtract 4 from 14. And if I subtract 4, since 5 is 4 and 1, I only need to subtract 1 more from 10. So 10 then minus 1 equals 9. Okay, now I can go plug this in for the number of roses that we started with. So I'm going to put 9 up here for our start. Now 9 plus 2. So I can draw my picture to prove my answer, 9, and I'm adding 2 more. 1, 2, and I can count up 9, 10, 11. Okay, so our answer is 11. And just like we said at the beginning, the question is asking for how many roses. So always make sure that you are paying attention to the labels. This problem definitely tried to trick you by asking about roses and trying to make you think that they've started with 14, but it was 14 flowers total, not 14 roses. Okay, so I hope that that problem was maybe a little bit less complicated than problem number 2. But you know what? Even if it was very complicated for you, we now know to pay attention to all of these labels in the problem, so that way when we're solving it, we don't make any mistakes and we aren't tricked up by it. Okay, we'll work on 2-step word problems again tomorrow morning, and I really can't wait to see everyone's Halloween costumes. All right, see you tomorrow.